Daily Rituals, How Artists Work, by Mason Currey. Picture this, a young writer named Franz Kafka sitting in his cramped apartment, surrounded by family noise, penning a letter to the woman he loves. He's frustrated beyond belief. Every day, he drags himself to a soul-crushing insurance job, and when he finally gets home, all he wants is peace and quiet to write. But the world won't cooperate. In his letter, he pours out his heart. Time is short. My strength is limited, the office is a horror, the apartment is noisy, and if a pleasant, straightforward life is not possible, then one must try to wriggle through by subtle maneuvers. Wriggle through by subtle maneuvers. Doesn't that just perfectly capture the feeling? Maybe you've been there too. You've got something burning inside you, something you need to do, study for that exam, learn guitar, finally start that project. But life keeps throwing obstacles in your path. The noise, the chaos, the million little things demanding your attention. You're constantly fighting just to find a few precious moments of focus. Well, here's the thing. You're in good company. The greatest minds in history felt exactly the same way. And that's the fascinating world we're diving into today. We're exploring Mason Currey's wonderful book, Daily Rituals, How Artists Work. Think of it as getting a backstage pass to the lives of geniuses. The painters, writers, composers, and scientists who shaped our world. We're going to peek behind the curtain at their most private and sometimes downright weird daily habits. What Currey discovered will probably surprise you. Greatness doesn't come from some magical lightning bolt of inspiration. It's forged in the quiet, often boring details of everyday life. It's built brick by brick through routine. Here's what I promise you'll get from our time together. You won't just learn what these brilliant people did every day. You'll understand the hidden architecture behind their success. You'll discover that you don't need a perfect life to do great work. You just need a routine that protects what matters. You'll see that genius isn't something you are. It's something you do, day after day. And by the end, you'll have the keys to start building your own rituals, your own subtle maneuvers, to help you wriggle through the noise and create a life that matters. Let's dive in. So when you picture a great artist at work, what do you see? Maybe a painter, covered in paint, lost in a creative frenzy, or a writer, waiting for inspiration to strike, scribbling furiously into the night. We love this romantic idea that genius is chaotic, spontaneous, wild, and free. But Mason Currey's journey through the lives of over 160 creative minds reveals something surprising and much more useful. For most of them, the secret wasn't chaos at all. It was routine. The poet W.H. Auden said it perfectly. Routine in an intelligent man is a sign of ambition, and boy did he live by that. Auden was obsessed with his schedule. A guest once noticed he checked his watch constantly. Everything from meals to writing to crossword puzzles happened at a precise time. Up just after 6 in the morning, writing from 7 to 11:30, more work after lunch, cocktail hour at exactly 6:30, in bed by 9:30 or 10. He believed this military precision was essential. It tamed his passion, disciplined his time, and let him be creative on his own schedule, not waiting around for some mythical muse. He even had strong opinions about night owls, claiming that only the Hitlers of the world work at night. No honest artist does. Now that's pretty extreme, but it points to the book's central idea, something the psychologist William James championed. James believed we should put as much of our life on autopilot as possible. By forming good habits, he said, we can free our minds to advance to really interesting fields of action. A solid routine creates a well-worn groove for your mental energy. It saves you from the tyranny of your moods. You don't wake up asking, do I feel like working today? You just work, because that's what you do at that time. The irony? William James himself was a chronic procrastinator who could never stick to a schedule. He preached the value of habits because he knew, from painful experience, the misery of living without them. Classic, do as I say, not as I do. And this reveals the beautiful paradox at the heart of this book. There's no single perfect routine. The path to greatness is deeply personal. For every disciplined morning person, there's a tortured night owl who thrives in chaos. Let's look at that divide, the eternal battle between day and night. On one side, the morning larks. Ernest Hemingway was one of them, up every day around 5:30, as soon as first light appeared, even after a night of drinking. There is no one to disturb you, he explained, and it is cool or cold and you come to your work and warm as you write. His golden rule? Always stop when you know what happens next. That way, you never face a blank page in the morning. You just pick up the thread and go. The Japanese novelist Haruki Murakami takes this even further. When he's writing a novel, he wakes up at 4 in the morning and works for 5 to 6 hours straight. Afternoons are for running or swimming. Bedtime is 9 sharp. The repetition itself becomes the important thing, he says. It's a form of mesmerism. I mesmerize myself to reach a deeper state of mind. But what about those who couldn't or wouldn't work in daylight? Here we find some fascinating and tortured souls. The French novelist Honoré de Balzac lived a life of extremes. He called it orgies of work, punctuated by orgies of relaxation. When he was in work mode, his schedule was brutal. Light dinner at 6, then bed. Wake up at 1 in the morning. Write for 7 straight hours, take a 90-minute nap at 8, then right back to it. His fuel? Coffee. Endless black coffee. We're talking up to 50 cups a day. He wasn't living, he said, he was wearing himself out. But he felt he had no choice. Gustave Flaubert, who gave us Madame Bovary, was another night creature. He found daytime too noisy and distracting. So his entire day revolved around one sacred purpose: being ready for his real work, which only began after his mother went to bed around 10 at night. Then he'd write, hunched over his table while the world slept. He described it as an, quote, austere life, stripped of all external pleasure, sustained only by a kind of permanent frenzy. He loved his work, he said, with a love that is frantic and perverted, as an ascetic loves the hair shirt that scratches his belly. It took him nearly 5 years of this nightly struggle to finish Madame Bovary. Then there's Samuel Beckett, the playwright behind Waiting for Godot. During his most productive period, which he called the siege in the room, his routine was simple. Wake up early afternoon, make scrambled eggs, lock himself in his room to write for as many hours as he could stand. Then late at night, wander the bars of Paris, drinking cheap red wine before stumbling home just before dawn. He learned to accept his dark, depressive side and make it work for him. So we've got disciplined daytimers and chaotic night crawlers. But what about the fuel powering these creative engines? We've mentioned Balzac's legendary coffee habit. He wasn't alone. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, had a ritual as strange as his philosophy. He owned at least 50 sets of cups and saucers, but only one of each kind. He'd ask his secretary to choose a cup and justify the choice. Then Kierkegaard would pile sugar into it until it rose above the rim and pour strong black coffee over the pyramid, dissolving it into a syrupy brew that he'd drink down in one gulp. For many, the stimulants were much stronger. W. H. Auden called his routine the chemical life. For 20 years he took Benzedrine, an amphetamine, every morning like most people take a multivitamin, at night sedatives for sleep. He saw these drugs as labor-saving devices in the mental kitchen, though he knew they were crude tools, liable to injure the cook. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre took this to an extreme. In the 1950s, feeling exhausted but refusing to slow down, he started taking a drug called Coridrain, a mix of amphetamine and aspirin. The prescribed dose? 1 or 2 tablets a day. Sartre took 20. He'd chew them one after another while working, and each tablet would produce a page or two of dense philosophical writing. His daily diet also included 2 packs of cigarettes, several pipes, over a quart of alcohol, and barbiturates for sleep. A gamble of his health against his philosophy, and he knew it. Even Ayn Rand, author of The Fountainhead, relied on Benzedrine to finish her novel. Under deadline pressure, she'd work day and night, sometimes for 30 hours straight. The drug helped her push through, but she kept using it for 3 decades, and it took a heavy toll. Now, hearing all this, you might think you need some perfect, isolated life to be a genius. A quiet study, no day job, endless, uninterrupted hours. But here's one of the most inspiring lessons from daily rituals. Many of these great minds created their masterpieces in the cracks of ordinary life, often under incredible constraints. Think of Jane Austen. She never lived alone. She wrote her brilliant novels in the family sitting room, surrounded by people, constantly interrupted. She wrote on small sheets of paper she could quickly hide under blotting paper when visitors came. There was a squeaky door that warned her when someone approached, and she refused to have it fixed. She didn't have a room of her own, but she found a way. Or Wallace Stevens, one of America's greatest poets. He was also an insurance lawyer, working at Hartford Accident and Indemnity Company for nearly 40 years. Having a job introduced discipline into his life. He composed poetry in his head during long walks to and from the office, scribbling lines on envelopes in his pocket. At work, mild-mannered businessman, in his mind, creating worlds. T.S. Eliot was another poet with a day job. For 8 years he clerked at a London bank. Bowler hat, pinstriped suit, the whole uniform. He'd join the crowd of commuters crossing London Bridge every morning, a scene he'd later immortalize in The Wasteland. He found the job less tiring than teaching, and it gave him financial security, leaving evenings free for poetry. Even William Faulkner wrote one of his classics, As I Lay Dying, while working the night shift at a power plant. He'd sleep a few hours in the morning, write all afternoon, then head to his undemanding job where he could catnap through the night. He once said, I write when the spirit moves me, and the spirit moves me every day. For these artists, constraints weren't obstacles, they were the framework. They didn't have all the time in the world, so they learned to cherish what they had. Of course, a book about rituals wouldn't be complete without the truly weird and wonderful. The small, superstitious, and sometimes bizarre habits artists use to coax their creativity. We talked about Kierkegaard's coffee pyramid. But how about the German playwright Friedrich Schiller? He kept a drawer full of rotting apples in his study. He claimed he needed the smell of their decay to feel the urge to write. The novelist Thomas Wolfe discovered something almost literally inappropriate. Standing naked by his hotel window one night, he found himself unconsciously touching himself, a childhood habit. While not sexual, he found it fostered such a good male feeling that it stoked his creative energies. From then on, he used this method to kickstart writing sessions. Patricia Highsmith, who wrote dark thrillers like The Talented Mr. Ripley, had a whole collection of quirks. She'd sit on her bed surrounded by cigarettes, coffee, a donut, and a saucer of sugar to make writing as pleasurable as possible. She was also fascinated by snails. She bred 300 of them at home. Once showed up at a party with a handbag containing lettuce and 100 snails, her companions for the evening. And when moving to France, she smuggled her favorite snails across the border by hiding them under her breasts. The composer Igor Stravinsky had a simpler trick when feeling blocked. He'd do a headstand. It, quote, rests the head and clears the brain, he said. And B.F. Skinner, the famous behavioral psychologist, treated his own writing like a laboratory experiment. He used a timer for sessions and meticulously plotted his hours and words on a graph, conditioning himself to be productive. These quirks might seem silly, but they served a real purpose. They were triggers, signals to the brain that it's time to shift gears and enter that special focused state where creative work happens. The rotting apples themselves weren't magic. The ritual was. So, after all these stories, the disciplined, the chaotic, the drug-fueled, the eccentric, what's the one lesson tying it all together? If there's one recurring theme, it's the rejection of the myth of inspiration. Very few of these great minds sat around waiting for ideas to strike. They showed up. Every day. The American painter Chuck Close said it best, inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. Stephen King embodies this philosophy. He writes every single day of the year, including his birthday and holidays. Daily quota of 2,000 words, and he doesn't stop until he hits it. Starts around 8:30 in the morning, usually done by early afternoon. The rest of the day is his. This simple, unglamorous routine has produced an astonishing body of work. Somerset Maugham, the British writer, wrote for 3 or 4 hours every morning. He thought of writing as a habit, like drinking, easy to form, difficult to break. To avoid distraction, his desk always faced a blank wall. Anthony Trollope, who wrote 47 novels while working as a civil servant, paid a groom an extra £5 a year to bring him coffee every morning at 5:30 without fail. Then he'd write for 3 hours, watch in front of him, requiring himself to produce 250 words every 15 minutes. If he finished a novel before his 3 hours were up, he'd immediately take out fresh paper and start the next one. It's this commitment to the process, day in and day out, that separates professionals from amateurs. It's understanding that, as Mason Currey writes, grand creative visions are built from small daily increments. It's about finding your own way to wriggle through, whether that means waking at 4 in the morning or working through the night fueled by coffee, whether it means facing a blank wall or needing the smell of rotting apples, whether it means doing headstands or just sitting down at the same time every day, because that's the rule. The real magic isn't in the specific routine. It's in having a routine at all. As we step back and look at this incredible mosaic of human creativity, what does it mean for us, right here, right now? I think the most powerful and liberating message of daily rituals is this: there's no one right way to live a creative and productive life. We live in a world selling us formulas for success. The 5 a.m. Club. The 10 steps to productivity. We're led to believe that if we could just copy some hyper-successful person's routine, we'd achieve the same results. This book gently but firmly shatters that illusion. It shows us that the rigid discipline of Anthony Trollope and the chaotic hedonism of Francis Bacon can both lead to genius. The early morning clarity of Hemingway and the nocturnal frenzy of Balzac can both produce masterpieces. The true lesson isn't to copy someone else's ritual. It's to grant yourself permission to discover your own. It's an invitation to become a curious scientist of your own life, to experiment, to pay attention to your own energy, your own rhythms, your own strange little quirks. When do you feel most clear-headed? First thing in the morning or late at night when the house is quiet? Do you work best in long, uninterrupted blocks or short, intense sprints? Does a clean, orderly space calm you, or does a bit of clutter make you feel at home? Do you need silence, or does the buzz of a coffee shop help you focus? The lives in this book give us a blueprint, not for what to do, but for how to think about our work. The common thread isn't the schedule, it's the intention. It's consciously designing a life that protects your creative time, however you define that. For Jane Austen, it was a creaking door. For T.S. Eliot, a bank job. For Maya Angelou, a tiny, mean hotel room where she went every morning with nothing but a dictionary, a Bible, a deck of cards, and a bottle of sherry. Different forms of the same thing, a fortress built to protect focus from the invading army of daily life. So how can you start building your own fortress? Here are a few simple things to try, inspired by the lives we've explored. First, find and defend your sacred time. It doesn't have to be 3 hours. Could be 30 minutes. But find a time that's yours, and yours alone. Maybe before anyone else wakes up. Maybe during lunch break. Whatever it is, treat it as non-negotiable. This is your time for what matters most. Second, create a start ritual. Just like Skinner's timer or Kierkegaard's coffee, you need a small, repeatable action that tells your brain, it's time to begin. Could be making a specific cup of tea, putting on a certain playlist, or like Twyla Tharp, simply getting in a cab. The ritual itself doesn't matter. Its consistency gives it power. And third, divorce the process from the outcome. So many of these brilliant minds, Flaubert, Joyce, Proust, agonized over their work. But they showed up anyway. They understood that a single day's work might be terrible. They might produce only one sentence or one page they'd throw away. That's fine. The goal isn't to be brilliant every day. The goal is to sit down and do the work every day. Trust that small daily increments will, over time, add up to something magnificent. Ultimately, this book is a profound comfort. It reminds us that even the greatest geniuses were just people. They struggled with procrastination, self-doubt, and distraction. They were racked by insecurity. They wasted time. They were, in other words, human. Their greatness wasn't a gift from the heavens. It was testament to their stubborn, persistent, and deeply personal commitment to showing up. That's a look inside Daily Rituals: How Artists Work by Mason Currey. We've explored some incredible stories today, but I'll be honest, a summary can only scratch the surface. The real magic of this book is in the details, in seeing the vast and varied tapestry of human creativity, one life at a time. This summary is your starting point, a way to see if these ideas spark something in you. If anything we've talked about today made you curious, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning interesting facts. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you think about your own potential and daily life. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.